A simultaneous increase in inflation and unemployment could be explained by an increase in which of the following? So in this question, we're told that there is a simultaneous increase in inflation and unemployment, and we're asked to identify an increase in which of the following choices would lead to this increase in inflation and unemployment. So to answer this question, let's draw the aggregate demand and short-run aggregate supply model. So for this model, the x-axis represents the real GDP, and the y-axis represents the price level. So there are two sloping curves in this model. The downward sloping curve represents the aggregate demand, and the upward sloping curve represents the short-run aggregate supply. Now, option choice A says consumer spending. This is incorrect because an increase in consumer spending would influence the aggregate demand, and it would do so by shifting the aggregate demand to the right, since an increase in consumer spending means an increase in the aggregate demand. And the result would look like the following, where there is now an 82 curve, and the original real GDP is right here, and now the real GDP is here. The x-axis can also be meant to represent the employment. So with that said, we can see that there is an increase in employment or a decrease in unemployment. Similarly, for inflation, there's an increase in inflation because the original price level was here, but now it's up here. So, as a result from an increase in consumer spending, there's an increase in inflation and a decrease in unemployment, which is not what we're looking for. Therefore, we can eliminate option choice A. B, the money supply. This is also incorrect because an increase in the money supply, leads to an increase, or rather a decrease in the interest rates, and a decrease in interest rates means that the investments will increase, and an increase in investments means that there's greater investment spending, and because there's greater investment spending, the aggregate demand will increase and shift to the right again. And we've already detailed how this would look on the graph, and it was not resulting in an increase in inflation and an increase in unemployment. So B is also incorrect. C, labor productivity. So an increase in labor productivity would mean that the short-run aggregate supply curve would shift to the right, and this would result in the following curve. And for our real GDP, unemployment, and price level, our real GDP would increase because originally it was at this point, but now it's here. And for unemployment, that would mean that unemployment would decrease. For inflation, there would be lower inflation because the price level was originally up here, but now it's down here. And because this is not showing an increase in inflation and an increase in unemployment, we can eliminate C as well. D, investment spending. We've already detailed how an increase in the money supply leads to greater investment spending, and investment spending resulted in a shift to the right of the AD curve, which was wrong because it did not lead to an increase in inflation and an increase in unemployment. So we can eliminate D as well, because an increase in investment spending does not lead to an increase in inflation and an increase in unemployment. E, inflationary expectations. This is the correct answer because an increase in inflationary expectations means that the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift to the left, and this will result in a lower or a greater unemployment because unemployment is originally here, but now when it moves to the left, that leads to a greater unemployment. And the price level is originally here, but after the shift to the left, it has a price level up here, so an increase in inflation as well. And this follows a simultaneous increase in inflation and unemployment. So E is the correct answer.